The Hawks say a group of Ethiopians rescued from a house in Johannesburg are being processed to determine their status. 3 people have been arrested after a human trafficking ring was uncovered in Sandringham last night. Now, for some analysis and reaction to this, we are joined by forensic investigator Chad Thomas. Chad, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this afternoon. Now, how prevalent is human trafficking in South Africa, particularly concerning migrants from countries like Ethiopia? What would you say are the primary factors that are driving this issue in our country?
Very good afternoon to you and the viewers. This is a potentially horrific case. There's a lot of stories coming out about this particular raid. It took place last night in Lombardy East, which falls under the Sandringham policing precinct, and it involved members of the South African Police Services. The Hawks are now involved, Home Affairs are involved, even JMPD is involved. The fact that people were being kept in deplorable conditions, some have been injured and taken to hospital, some were found naked. There are rumors that there was a lot of blood found in the house, leading to speculation that there was assaults taking place, is of grave concern. Now, the trafficking in persons is a worldwide phenomenon. South Africa is not alone in this, and it actually impacts on millions of people worldwide each and every year. One would not expect in 2025 that we are living with what we call modern term slavery. And this slavery can take the form of persons being trafficked or persons being indentured. And we've seen in South Africa an increase. There was a farm raided during 2024 where people were found from foreign countries working and being kept captive in the dormitories on this particular farm. They weren't allowed to leave the farm. They were under guard. We know that from the 90s, people were trafficked, specifically women from Thailand, Ukraine, Russia, to work in South Africa's sex trade industry. They would come here under false pretenses, be it that they're going to be dancing, be it that they're going to be working as waitresses. Their passports get taken away. They get told they owe a lot of money for their travel to South Africa, and they're then forced and groomed into various activities. And of course, then we know about sweatshops. We know about that sweatshop that was raided where they were making denim jeans and other clothing and were locked in at night and guarded. And those people were also working under horrific conditions. So trafficking in persons is prevalent throughout the world, but it's become exceptionally prevalent in South Africa because of our porous borders and issues that we have within law enforcement.
I mean, you speak about modern day slavery and just how we are now seeing a prevalence of this happening in South Africa. Do we know particularly why people are being brought into South Africa? Is it because of those sweatshops that you make mention of? Are they brought in to do specific labor activities? Or is South Africa just a port where they are passing by and are taken to other countries where some of these services are needed?
So I would say both aspects that you've raised are pertinent. In some points, we are a transshipment point for people in terms of the trafficking in persons. We know that people have come to South Africa and South Africans themselves have been trafficked specifically to the Far East, where they've been used as drug mules, as well as to the Middle East, where some of them have been used as sex slaves. A lot of them, under false pretenses, have gone overseas looking for better opportunities. The people that are in South Africa that have come from neighboring countries and further abroad come here sometimes as what we call economic refugees. They're coming here because they want to have a better opportunity to try and make money, and they believe that South Africa has opportunities. And a lot of these vulnerable people are lured here under false pretenses. Their families back home are under the control of gangs, so they can't really do anything to try escape in South Africa or to try blow the whistle because they're concerned about the safety of their families back home. They're told that because they were brought into South Africa in a manner and fashion which was tantamount to being illegal, they were trafficked into South Africa, and that they're undocumented, that if they get handed over to the police, there'll be an issue for them and they'll be deported back home. Otherwise, their passports are confiscated. But most of the time, they're lured here under false pretenses for economic reasons, and they then introduced to sweatshops, they're introduced to sex trafficking, and they're introduced into forced and menial labor.
You spoke about porous borders, and we've seen how border management authorities have really been in action over the last couple of weeks and months in ensuring that our borders are tightened. Do we know how the most prevalent way in which people are brought into South Africa? Is it through ship? Is it on land? Is it by air?
I'm assuming it would be our land borders with our neighboring countries, and those neighboring countries with other countries further afield and north of South Africa. It's very important to take into consideration that the Border Management Authority is a relatively new agency, and they've got a lot to contend with, and they're trying their best with limited resources. The South African Police Services act in conjunction and support of this particular agency, the BMA. And what is of what's of great interest is that the letter that Minister Mkhunu sent the National Commissioner of the South African Police Services, General Masemola, on the 31st of December 2024, New Year's Eve, had 3 issues that needed the urgent attention of the National Commissioner of the South African Police Services. And one of those was that the minister required a strategy and an updated policy from the National Commissioner in respect of the police's role in securing our ports of entry, be they airports, be they seaports, be they land ports. So people can be smuggled in from the Middle East and from the Far East by container and on ship. People can be flown in on cargo planes, but the majority of people will be coming in over our land borders. And the fact that the minister is taking this so seriously, that's one of the 3 issues that he put into a letter on the day before the new year, shows that the South African Police Services, together with the Border Management Agency, are taking this very seriously. But there's still so many areas that people can come into our country that are not correctly secured, that they will need the support most probably of the SANDF, and they will need more budget and other resources.
And I mean, in August last year, we saw 82 Ethiopians in a similar situation in the same area. There were arrests made then. There have been 3 people who've been arrested now. And like you mentioned, that our law enforcement agencies are just really having so many challenges in combating human trafficking. What challenges do you think they face in investigating and prosecuting these trafficking cases?
You hit the nail on the head. It all comes down to the investigation. You can have disruptive and dismantling operations taking place based on intelligence provided by the police crime intelligence component. You can have massive arrests taking place of undocumented individuals during operations like Shanela. But if the case isn't investigated correctly, the National Prosecuting Authority is not going to enroll it. And some people will be deported, they'll come back to South Africa. Other people that have been trafficked may return to their homes overseas, but those people that were involved in the actual trafficking continue to traffic because they haven't been held to account. There's been no consequences. And therein lies the biggest problem we have in South Africa at the moment. We have a massive shortage, and I would call it a critical shortage, of qualified and experienced detectives within SAPS, as well as within the Hawks. They haven't been capacitated correctly. They don't have sufficient members. Right now, what we're doing when it comes to crime in South Africa is a band-aid approach. You'll see that all of our resources will get focused on zama-zamas. Then they'll be focused on cash in transit heists. Then they'll be focused on ATM bombings. Then they'll be focused on kidnap for ransom. Then they'll be focused on murder for hire. A country that is close to 70 million people only has 180,000 police officers, of which only 150,000 are operational. The Hawks have around about 5,000 members. We need to seriously consider capacitating and resourcing them correctly. The minister's asked for a budget increase from 100 billion rand per annum to 189 billion rand per annum. He needs more than that, but we hope he gets it, and we hope that he gets more. We have to support our policing structures because right now they cannot cope with the tsunami of crime that is coming into our country.
So, Chad, with this bleak picture that you've just painted now, can we expect more cases of human trafficking and huge numbers and scores of people within our borders that are kept in deplorable situations like we saw this morning?
Yes, and we're even hearing that some of the zama-zamas have been brought to South Africa under false pretenses and are forced to mine underground in the most deplorable of conditions. So yes, until we have a situation where we can effectively control our borders, we are going to continue with this problem. Transnational crime syndicates are treating South Africa as a place in which they can continue unabated. And we're very fortunate that we have a minister that seems to be very victim-centric and seems to be taking this problem exceptionally seriously. He's saying the right things, and he's been doing a lot in the last 6 odd months that he's been in office. But he needs the support. The GNU is well-structured. We have all these policing capacity in terms of units and infrastructure, but we don't have the manpower. Security organizations that are in the private sector are acting in support of the police in what's called force multipliers through a project known as E2, which was set up by Business Against Crime South Africa, some of the bigger security companies and SAPS, but it's not enough. We need to train our existing SAPS members to be experienced enough that they can take a docket to a prosecutor, and the prosecutor can feel confident enough to enroll that docket on the prospect of a successful prosecution.
And I mean, you speak of the interventions that need to happen within our borders. How important is regional and international cooperation in terms of combating human trafficking? What steps do you think need to be taken to enhance this collaboration across our borders?
Look, we have problems on our borders. When one looks at what was happening in Mozambique the past couple of months since the elections, we know that those people may be in a position that they become refugees and need our assistance. But we also heard about a prison where people were broken out of, and that was a maximum security prison. And those particular people are criminals, and they may want to make their way over the border to South Africa, where they can conduct criminal activities. We're far more lucrative than Mozambique. If we look at SADC, they have what's called a joint chief of police forum, where the different policing agencies from the member states of SADC get together and communicate. We're members of Interpol. We have a very good relationship with Interpol, and Interpol shares intelligence with South Africa. We share intelligence with them. But this is a global problem, and it's a problem that needs to be addressed. And it comes down to social issues. Just like we've got social issues in South Africa, where we have this massive disparities between the haves and the have-nots from an economical perspective, other countries are experiencing similar problems. And a lot of people look to South Africa as being this land of opportunity. And a lot of them come to South Africa under false pretenses, thinking they're going to be working legitimately, and they find themselves trafficked, they find themselves assaulted, they find themselves kept in the most horrendous conditions, and in some terrible cases, they find themselves dead. So we really need to address the situation, and we really need to take our borderline states into consideration, so that this isn't just a problem that lands up at our border. They need to also do things at their borders with other countries north of South Africa to ensure that we don't land up with the problem and they just acting as an open route to South Africa.
All right, Chair Thomas, we certainly have our work cut out for us as a country in managing these borders. Thank you so much for your analysis and your time with regards to the 26 Ethiopians that were found at a home in Sandringham early this morning. Now